Good afternoon and welcome to our first session in the Crowdfund Birmingham series, where today we're talking about planning your project. My name's Sammy Morger. I'm broadcasting live this afternoon from Crowdfunder HQ in Newquay, where it's actually a beautiful sunny day just outside the window there. It's a shame that you can't see it. So we're going to kick off straight away with a little bit of an introduction to Crowdfunder. So we are the UK's #1 rewards-based crowdfunding platform. We're based, as I say, down here in Cornwall. And we have around about 180 to 200 projects coming and adding to our website every single day. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the scale of crowdfunding in the UK at the moment. So what is rewards-based crowdfunding? Some of you may have a pretty good idea about what it entails. Other people perhaps might be a little bit more unclear. So I'm going to explain it really quickly just by example. So I'll introduce you to Phil, who is here on the left-hand side, who had an idea. He wanted to open a bakery in Leeds. He was short round about £8,000 was what he needed to buy his final oven and finish kitting out the bakery. He went to the bank and they weren't able to lend. He'd used up all of the favours and savings that he had getting up to that point. So he decided instead to raise the money that he needed through crowdfunding. He went onto the Crowdfunder website and created his own unique page that had the story of his project and it had rewards that were on offer if people wanted to contribute. So for example, if someone contributed £50 towards his campaign, in return, they would get a loaf of bread every week for 6 months. That's it, it's a straight exchange. So they don't own any part of Phil's business. They don't get their money back. It's just a straight swap. £50 and they get a loaf of bread every week for 6 months. So at the end of 49 days, when Phil had finished crowdfunding, he'd raised £8,690 from 144 people in his local community. So not only did that give him the money that he needed to complete the project, that also meant that he had 144 people who were already aware of him and his bakery and what it is that he wanted to do. So he almost had that many customers sort of teed up and ready to go. So it was a really great validation for him. Now, of course, that is a bakery, and we do lots and lots of other types of projects on Crowdfunder. So lots of businesses, social enterprises, quite a lot in the food and drink space, of course. We do have artists, filmmakers, musicians, and community groups, sports clubs, even charities that all come on and use Crowdfunder. So it really is a hub of great ideas. So looking at the reasons why people choose to crowdfund, and of course there's the funding, that bit's in the name, we know about that bit, the fact that you get money, but actually for a lot of projects, some of these other things are very much part of that decision making too. This first one, validation, was really key for Phil with his bakery. So it was a really fantastic way of him finding out actually if people in his local community had any interest in buying bread from a local bread co-op. So for him, he already proved that by having 144 people who thought that, yes, I'm willing to support that, it's a good idea. The other thing, the main reason why a lot of business projects and actually people who are looking to grow into new audiences crowdfund is because of awareness. It's absolutely impossible to run a successful crowdfunding project without telling everyone that you know about it. So it's very much one of those welcome side effects, actually. It's a really fantastic boost to your organisation, your brand, and just your visibility and people's awareness kind of within your community, either locally or further afield. The other thing that we find is that people who back crowdfunding projects actually tend to go on to be long-term advocates of that organisation or that business, for example. So because they were part of the story, they were part of that formation and that journey, they tend to be on for the long haul. So they make some of the best customers that you'll ever have and some of the best volunteers or supporters. Finally, and this is the one that's very specific to Crowdfunder, is that we actually have various partnerships with different organisations across the UK who offer up grants in the form of extra funding that you can actually receive on your crowdfunding project. You receive that money just like a pledge from anyone else in your crowd. It goes towards your target, and for many projects that's a really fantastic draw. So looking at a couple of those funds really quickly, obviously today we're here talking about Crowdfund Birmingham. So for many of you guys, this fund and the Community Innovation Fund will be really relevant. So Birmingham City Council have got £470,000 worth of grants for community projects that improve health, well-being and independence. And you can actually get up to £10,000 per project, and they'll put in up to a maximum of half of whatever you're looking to raise. And I've got some really exciting news specifically about Birmingham. We have a brand new fund launching next week called the Brum Smiles Community Fund, where we've got £140,000 worth of grants for organisations working with families and young people to improve health and well-being. That's really exciting, so do stay tuned for more information on that. So over these next 3 sessions, we're going to be breaking down the crowdfunding journey into these 3 main phases. So obviously today, starting with planning your project, and this is all about having a really strong foundation on which to build everything going forwards. And the industry average in terms of success rate of those who start crowdfunding and actually are successful is actually around about 23%, which sounds really low. But do bear in mind, that's the good, the bad and the ugly in that. So compare that to the success rate on Crowdfunder, it's actually around about 42%. So it's a massive increase on the industry average. And one of the really big reasons behind that is all of this help and advice that we offer. So having access to these live webinars, to ask us questions directly, to the packs and the guides that we offer, that's one of the really big reasons why our success rate is that much higher. So if you do want to give your project the absolute best chance possible, definitely keep watching these videos and do engage with the packs. So today, specifically, we're looking at planning your project. And again, we can break that down into these 3 elements. First up, of course, making a plan. Secondly, identifying the skills that you're going to need. And finally, figuring out who your crowd is, that big question. So hopefully some of you will recognise this document here. This is from the first part of our guides on planning your project. I think it's on page 4, you'll find this checklist, and it's a really good starting point when you come to make your own plan. Some people prefer to just use this. Some people like to use an Excel spreadsheet or a Gantt chart or something pretty complicated. It doesn't need to be. It can just be a to-do list. You know, you can just be stuck on the fridge or what have you. But do start thinking about what it is that you need to do in order to get your project funded. And as I say, this is absolutely the best place to start. The next section, which is really key in that fundraising pack, is looking at the skills that you're going to need to successfully crowdfund. Now, we've identified 8 of the key ones here, but there may be others that are specific to your project, and perhaps some of them might be a bit less relevant. So as the person who is here today joining us on this live webinar, you're probably the project leader. You probably sit up there in the top left-hand corner, but you potentially fill some of the other roles as well. So perhaps you're a very good content writer, perhaps you're also very creative, you can make things look good. So it might be that you can actually take care of telling the story and making the page look really fantastic yourself. But you might be less familiar with LinkedIn, for example, or with Facebook. So you might need a little bit of help with that. So by identifying where your skills lie, and actually any gaps that you might have, you can start to think about who you might want to recruit to get on board and help you with your crowdfunding project. Now, usually most teams behind a crowdfunder are made up with between sort of 2 to 5 people. Much more than that, it can start to get sort of a bit of a case of too many chefs in the kitchen, which we absolutely don't want. But of course, every person that you add to your team gives you access to a whole world of other connections for your network mapping, which brings us very much onto the next slide. So this you'll find on page 6 of the pack. It's a bit of an example of how to do a network map. So what we've put on there is a few suggestions of the different groups that you might want to think about when you're mapping this out. But essentially, it's a way of visually drawing out everyone that you know, everyone that you have a connection to, and then later, everyone that they have a connection to, and everyone you'd like to have a connection to. So just take a second to have a look through some of the different categories on there and think about any others that you might want to add in. So here's a bit of an example of one that I've done. So I printed off the page and I started to fill out some of the different groups on here. We've got some crowdfunder stuff, friends at different magazines, different organisations that I have links to. And going on from there, I've actually started to highlight people that I consider to be my key influencers, those opinion leaders, the people that I know if I can get them on board, then others will follow. If I can get them talking about my project, getting a pledge on early, then it's really going to help to secure that support going forwards. And then next, I actually took my pink highlighter out and started to highlight those people that we call super backers, those ones who I think might be contributing perhaps a bigger amount of money to my project. So it might be a high net worth, it might be a corporate, it might just be a local organisation, someone like the Rotary or the WI. But do start those conversations early. That's why we start mapping this out as early as possible. So we start to get a real flavour of the shape and size of your network, of what your crowd could look like. So you can start to see quite quickly that actually you need a bigger piece of paper. I definitely recommend getting the biggest piece of paper that you can find and just adding to it and keep working on that as you go through the phases of working through your crowdfunding project. And do start adding on those second level connections. All the people that you know, who do they know? And who can they introduce you to, okay? So this brings us on to the next question, which is one of the really big ones that we need to answer, which is why are people going to back your project? And looking at your network map, you can start to look at some of the groups on there, the different individuals maybe, and start to think about where you could plot them on this diagram. So we can mainly break it down into 2 main groups for why people pledge. We've got the blue circle, which is people who believe in your idea. They think it's something that's going to do some good in the world, it's worthwhile, it's worth them spending their hard-earned money on. And on the other side, we have people who want the reward, or they have some sort of personal benefit if they back your project. And of course, that sort of greenish bit in the middle is where they overlap. And that's very much the sweet spot for crowdfunding. The more you can make sure that people within your crowd fit into that sweet spot and that your project fits into that sweet spot, the more successful you'll be. So as an example, I recently backed a project where I was very much in the blue circle. This is a project where they are actually reintroducing and releasing beavers back into Cornwall, which I thought was a fantastic idea. Really, really liked the way that they presented the story. I was more than happy just to contribute and donate to that project. On the other side, I also recently backed a project for Samphire Festival 2017. And the reward I got for contributing towards their project is tickets to the festival itself. And even better than that, there were tickets at a discounted price and they include a car parking pass. So for me, I very much supported that project because I wanted the reward. So you start to get a bit of an idea as to how that might vary from project to project. So do think about how your project fits into that map. So as you're going forwards now, this is something that you can start doing right from today, from day one, and that's nurturing your crowd. So this is all about talking to people, making people feel valued, letting them know what you're up to, particularly those who are quite close to you. And do start working on building your audience. Don't wait until a week before you go live to suddenly go, oh goodness, I wish I had a larger Facebook following, or I wish I'd spent some time tweaking up my website. You can start doing that now. This is all laying that foundation work. So if you're thinking again, actually social media profiles are looking a bit dull, or I haven't even set one up yet, let's start doing that soon. Start talking to people and get yourself in good order. So from here, the next thing to really do is actually just to go onto the Crowdfunder website and click that Start Crowdfunding button. What that will mean is that you're kind of in the system, you start working on your page. It doesn't mean that you're live, it doesn't mean that you've launched anything yet. No one can see what you're working on. It just means that you can start to get a bit of a better idea about what it's going to entail and what you're going to need to fill out. So I definitely recommend that as a bit of a next step. If you do have any questions at all, you can reach me directly on Twitter. I'm at Sammy Mordra for anything, any sort of short, sharp questions. Or you can pop us an email at support@crowdfunder.co.uk, and we'll be more than happy to go through any queries, any questions, anything specific to your project or otherwise. So next time around, we're going to be looking at the do's and don'ts when telling your story. We're also going to be looking at how to work out the best target for your project, and specifically how you decide between flexible funding or all or nothing. There'll be more on that later. So do join us for the next session. That's going to be at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the 17th of June. I hope that you've enjoyed the session today. If you do need to watch it back, you can do so. It will be here up on YouTube. And you can find, of course, links to the next sessions and any of the packs that you need down below on the YouTube. See you next time. Thanks.